Hey, it's Arcsecond. In this video I'll cover Diana's runes, masteries, and builds. Starting off, we'll take a look at her core items. The most core item for an AP champion right now is probably Void Staff. After that, Death Cap. However, Death Cap is rather expensive, and if the champion doesn't have high AP ratios, they might not build it. Diana has extremely high AP ratios though, and it's definitely something she wants in her kit. Then for the most core item for an AP melee champion, will probably have to be Hourglass, and this fits really well with Diana's kit. She definitely fits her diving playstyle. And then a lot of the AP champions have been building Lichbane, and this is an item that definitely works well with Diana's kit and fits her passive. However, for less gold, you can get an item that maximizes Diana's damage output because her highest AP ratio and highest base damage ability is her passive. And it's also very reliable and can be used the most frequently. And it also amplifies one of her greatest strengths, which is her pushing and her tower sieging. So this is generally her go-to item and what sets her apart from some of the other champions like Fizz and Caston in the game. There are some other items that are considered core for Diana that we'll take a look at, like Gunblade is an extremely efficient item and definitely fit her on-hit playstyle. However, since Diana has extremely high AP ratios and doesn't benefit that much from AD, also the active, the slow, isn't as necessary on Diana because of her R and E ability, and the sustain isn't that necessary on the later levels once this item is completed because of Diana's W, and it's also a rather expensive item. Same thing for Nomicon. Compared to Nashor's, since we'll both be getting 20% CDR, so we'll normally only want to build one of the two items. And the AP is slightly higher on Nomicon, and the passive, the 35% below dealing the previous wounds below 35% is harder to proc on Diana. And it's more situational, and you'll still be missing out a lot of the damage, especially the attack speed and being able to apply from passive and then getting that on-hit damage from Nashor's. And then Ludens is another item. So we have another item with 100 AP, which is definitely great for Diana's AP ratios. And movement speed is always a great stat to have, but this item just in general right now isn't being as built as often since it's not the most efficient, and it's also rather situational. This item is great against squishier champions, but a lot more situational and doesn't amplify all of Diana's strengths, and less useful against a lot of the champions, and there are certain builds that will counter this item a lot. So if anyone's building more defensive or you're up against a tank, this item won't be effective. And also just with her combo and her playstyle, often isn't utilized fully, since she's constantly clearing and might use something to combo off of so her proc will be used early if she's queuing a different target to Q R and then R again to a priority target. The proc will be lost and a lot of damage will be missing, while Nashor's consistent damage and fits her playstyle perfectly and amplifies all of her strengths. So to round out the build, if we take out Lichbane, we're left with these 4 core items. And the part that's missing now is a defensive item. So look at the possible defensive items in the game right now, and I ideally want something with health and possibly MR, since we're still missing some MR, although there are other ways to get around MR with her build. So we'll start off with so we have the 2 MR items. The problem with building Banshees and Abyssal Mass, one with Abyssal Mass we're missing on the AP, so it's not as efficient. Definitely want to maximize as much as you can within the build realistically. So Banshees is a great item, you're getting 70 MR and some CDR and a great active, which makes it a lot easier to engage. The problem with building this item is it's more situational. It might be great for your lane matchup and jungle matchup. However, it doesn't play around. Most of Diana's strongest position on the map is close to a tower, and since she's building these stats, she won't have any health and low armor to survive tower shots and survive a lot of the matchups. Since Diana is often found splitting and dealing in multiple skirmishes, and will be swapping lanes into a lane that's most likely or will often have AD damage, or when dealing with an AD carry and diving anyone in the team, it'll become a much less efficient item because we're missing out on that health. So ideally we want an item with health over MR. So we'll take a look at Rylai's. Rylai's has been nerfed, and the kiting style doesn't fit Diana's as well. We mentioned that for Gunblade. The slow isn't that necessary because of her E and her multiple R's that she can use. Landry is an extremely efficient item right now. Definitely something you could consider. 80 AP, 300 health. Although passive isn't applied that well with Diana, since most of her damage comes in a burst, and she doesn't apply it very often. These two items are generally Rylai's and Lantry's are definitely better suited for ranged champions. So now we go into Roa, and this is my favorite item to round out her kit. One item stat that's really underrated for Diana is mana, because one of the things she does extremely well is the ability of which her ability to clear minion waves fast and take objectives extremely efficiently. Because of her passive, all of the AoE that she has in her kit, with one full combo with her passive QWR passive, she can clear an entire wave. She can deny the enemy team a lot of gold by stealing camps, do multiple rotation. It also opens up a lot of plays. The health will allow you to dive a lot better, and you cannot look for different plays like 2-manning Baron or soloing Dragon is now a possibility with the extra mana that you have throughout the game. And another important part is when you're dealing with tanks, since you'll need multiple rotations to kill them. If you don't have this extra mana in her kit, it's often hard to actually win the duel and still keep pressure on after. So the amount of pressure she loses and the amount of time she can stay out of lane is a lot lower. Not only that, it's extremely efficient as a first item. It's only 2,700 gold, and the stats that you get from it fit her playstyle perfectly. Because early on, she can take advantage of some of the items, the more aggressive ones. And at level 5, she can pretty much clear the wave with 2 Qs. She'll clear the range creeps with 2, and she might need a few autos on the melee creeps. And because it'll still be too early, she'll get her first 1,100 gold before level 6 for Catalyst. So she can keep the push up mid safely, keep pressure, because she'll back and she's trying to deny and get the wave pushed into the enemy, because normally they haven't gotten their back off since you're utilizing her TP for laning early. And then you have such great push. Also, just having the health will make it safer for you to play up and get those auto attacks and passive, and use your passive. Another item that's similar but more expensive is GLP, and we've already mentioned that the slow and cutting style is better suited for ranged champions, even though similar stats, but the actual stats from Roa are cheaper, and you end up with 100 AP and great stats overall. Another decent item to help with Diana's lack of mobility is Proto Belt, but again, the stats are a lot lower and no mana. The other thing with the GLP items is it's hard to fit in the active. Diana has a really quick combo, and there's always something she wants to be using. 2 Rs, her passive, auto attacks, her E animation, and canceling that, and fitting in as many auto attacks as possible. So a lot of these animations are too slow for a combo, and the stats aren't as well. So we end up with the final build of Roa and Nashor's Deathcap Hourglass Void Staff. Now for the order of building it, and first we'll talk about her starting items. Also for melee champions, they gain passive stats, good MR per level. Health is extremely efficient, and we've already talked about how well Diana clears. So restoring 4 mana upon killing a unit, extremely efficient on Diana. And eventually sustain becomes less of a problem. So something like Corrupting Potion isn't as efficient. In Dark Seal, Diana has more of a farming objective-based style, and doesn't utilize and pick up as many kills early during the window when you still want to hold on to that Dark Seal item. So that's less efficient. It'll make her laning harder. She won't have that health, so it won't be harder to play as far up and harder to dive where a lot of her kills are found. Since that's one of her strongest positions at the map, is on by next to a tower. She can use her passive. She takes towers extremely fast, and just being able to stack her passive there. So we start with 1 Doran's Ring, and then we want to rush straight into Roa. Boots are picked up the tier 1 at any point, but it's good to, you can put them off all the way until after Roa, but whenever you have the extra gold for it, most of the time you'll want to start with Catalyst. Start with the Ruby Crystal. Even if you're back, you use TP to just getting a Ruby Crystal. Just having the extra health will allow you to play further up and get your passive off more often, and keep that push up mid and deny the enemy more CS. They'll start running and you'll start trading better, and you'll have a better push and always have the minion wave advantage. Then you want the Sapphire Crystal to also help with her push, and you can do the 2Q clear. One of Diana's greatest disadvantages is her ability to be picked off and ganked. But so if you can 2Q the wave, you can stand at a very safe distance and you have some health. And also, since Diana gets MR per level and you can run flat MR runes, these stats make it really hard for the enemy to trade with you. Now if this was your first 2 items, your first back, or even had 2 backs, and you don't have enough for or you have 850 gold. Here is where you can fit in blasting one first, and then you'll complete Roa. Otherwise, you'll go Catalyst and Boots, and then you'll finish completing Roa. Then after that, you'll start working on the Boots somewhere in between. You can sit on Boots and Codex. If you're still laning, Codex is more efficient generally. If you're already split pushing the side, already having Stingers pretty good. You can already start pushing faster with it, taking towers faster, and stealing camps faster. And here we get into the boots. Currently my two favorite are the tank boots. Since we haven't built Amar with our core build, one of the best ways to get it is through Merc Treads. And also the tenacity allows you to stay and keep up. You're less likely to be picked off, which is one of Diana's greatest weaknesses. And you can keep up her... And you can stay on top of your target and stay with them to continue auto trading, stay in Q range, stay in R range, and can keep up your damage. Or you can even, sometimes you need it so you can R out again, so you have an exit with your R. There's a time I like CDR boots since it's cheap, so you can get your core items a lot quicker, and then you finish out, you max out on CDR. And it's also having Flash and TP, two great summoner spells that definitely can be utilized frequently, so we definitely built the city boots. Pen boots aren't too bad. I've definitely built those less frequently, and then Ninja Tab are extremely efficient right now, and since we delay Hourglass in our build, getting the armor from Ninja Tab is extremely efficient. So after Roa and after Codex generally, we'll fit in our tier 2 boots, and then we'll continue working on Nashers. This is when we get big power spikes. Any AP you pick up after Nashers is a huge power spike for Diana. That's when she's getting extremely high AP ratios because her passive has a 0.8 AP ratio, plus the 0.15 AP ratio from Nash's Tooth. So any AP you're almost getting 100% AP ratio, plus base damages and her other AP ratios. So this is when Diana really starts to take off. And all of this damage will also be applied to her shield. It makes the death cap even more efficient, and the damage will be applied to all the minions, objectives, towers. This is when Diana can really start pressuring the map. And then this is when people will start building Amar. This is when you need Void Staff. Why Hourglass is delayed so much is because they changed the active. The numbers aren't that efficient, only 70 AP. Armor is definitely good in CDR, but the active has a 120-second cooldown. If you build this item earlier, and if you build it earlier in the build, one, if you're being ulted by Zed or something, for example, his cooldown will be back up before your cooldown's back up. And also if you have to build this, if you have to switch, if you have even an AP jungler like Elise or Rumble Top or even just the supports, if you're building this item early, something like 2 Doran's Hourglass, you won't trade really well with any other one. It's decent for laning, but even then Zed can play around it and the cooldown is so long. The cooldown becomes a lot more efficient. Fights are more spread out later on in the game because of death timers and the fight timings because of you're waiting for objectives to come up. So it becomes way more efficient. Also the amount of damage that's being negated is better. And if you build this earlier, you'll be missing out on a lot of the damage. And if you can't deal enough damage to make sure that your enemy can't turn on you because you didn't do enough damage or you didn't kill them, then Diana won't be as strong. So you really want to make sure they're getting them low enough, and that's why I put off Hourglass last. Sometimes we'll actually build it here, if since we want to be still splitting, and it helps with our dive. And if some of the carries who are main targets aren't building MR, it's more efficient to kill or go Hourglass before Void, since we'll be focusing them, and we'll still have plenty of damage to deal with tanks, even without Void Staff after, just because the numbers will be so high. So this is generally how we round out our build. And I hope that covers the build portion. Now we'll take a look at her runes. So for runes, we're investing into the laning phase. The most efficient reds right now for AP champions are definitely Magic Pen. The attack speed, it can't be utilized quite yet, and we're building Nashers later, and we have the passive, the 20% from her passive. So that's already enough for early game, and this will allow you to trade better with your key poke, W, and burst your target better. Health per level are the most efficient yellows, and they scale really well with Diana, her passive stats that she gains. And now for the blues, we just run flat MR all the way through since we put off our MR for a while, and having the health from Roa, passive health, health per level, it's extremely hard for AP champions to trade with you. So even if they have an 80 jungler, since the damage from their laner will be fairly low, you're still in a fairly safe spot, and this is the hardest part for Diana to get through. This is what you want to pass or survive this part. And then the most efficient, Quinn's AP, and definitely scale well with Diana. Some other pages we might take, so for instance, an 80 champion, lately we've been taking some flat MR, you can take some armor per level. How many you take? Some people go less flat armor. Page is rather similar, but for blues, we take AP per level since your AP ratios are so great. And we put off the CDR. Some CDR per level is not bad, but we prefer the flat AP, or the AP per level. And then the AP quints are still the same. And these are the two most frequent pages, or common pages. If we don't know what we're laning against, we'll just go for all health per level, and this page will be good against most situations. Since with Diana's Q farming playstyle, if she does 2 Qs for the wave, she can survive most laning phases with her W and the stats she gains with her health and passive stats she gains per level. She can survive most laning phases. So we'll stick with those 3 rune pages mostly. For masteries, we'll make the page really quick. Also investing heavily into laning. Sorcery Feast. It takes a while to proc the fresh blood early, even in melee matchups, and Feast is most consistent and give you most survivability. The natural talent extremely efficient on here. However, a lot of people have done the math. I haven't done it myself, but taking 1 point in vampirism and definitely applies enough damage, so any sustain, any amount of healing you're getting definitely fits well, even though sustain isn't as useful on Diana because of her W, and you already have Roa. And then Battle Chance, also the most efficient, and will give you the best time in lane instead of taking Double-Edged Sword. And Bounty Hunter, it takes a while to ramp up kills on Diana. Her power spike is later on into the game. So we stick with Battle Chance to give us the most damage and best laning phase early. Then we take Savagery to get our farm. Feast, also, or Secret Stash, also to increase your laning phase and better in all-in skirmishes, which Diana finds herself in a lot. Generally we'll build 4 to 5, we'll stick with potions, never switch to refillable. And then once we've completed Roa around level 9-10, we can stop building potions. Some matchups is better too. In melee matchups, you generally don't have to build as many potions. And in poke matchups, you'll build a few more. But these are really good. Then we'll put all of her points in Merciless, since she's naturally still an assassin, has great damage, and wants to finish off her enemy before they can turn on Diana while she's waiting for cooldowns and waiting for like another round of her passive. So we stick with Merciless. Some people run Meditation, but we have the Roa for mana, and we want to amplify our damage more. Then Dangerous Game. Most common for mid. Precision to amplify our damage. Normally we don't max out on CDR, and CDR isn't as useful since we're using her passive to deal a lot of her damage. And then Thunderlords procs extremely well on Diana, and fits her, extremely easy to proc. Her W alone will proc it, gives her the best laning phase and the best burst damage, which we're trying to do. The kiting style, having movement speed is always good, but the kiting style is generally more suited towards range champions, and Diana already has her E at 2 Rs, so when she commits to a fight, she wants to get the damage off as fast as possible, and therefore that's why we go Thunderlords. Last thing, we'll talk a little bit about the summoner spells. Since Diana to get through lane, and how we mentioned with her push that she can do with her passive, W, Q, all of her AoE damage and push, we want to take TP. Also gives her the best laning phase. It's very common for melee champions. Since melee champions can't play as far up in lane, they often have to use TP to get a reset off. So not only is it good for laning, and will allow you to get the most farm, but then also Diana can take advantage of her split pushing pressure, since ideally she wants to end up by a tower, has great flanks, great push, and she can clear multiple waves under there to combo with the Roa. And this is how you can do a lot of the backdoor plays, and this will overall get you the most gold and have the biggest impact in the game, or allow you to. And then Flash, great summoner spell. Her Flash combo with if she has her passive up, or if you Q Flash, all these spells and combos are great for Diana, and just one of the best summoner spells in the game. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching.